welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Today I'm going to go into some music charts and fingering charts, but before I do so, I want to show you two new-to-me recorders that were just given to me as a gift. Now, these are not new instruments, but they are new to me, and they do play very well. One is from Korea, and the other is from Japan. So I think I'll show you the one that comes from Japan first. It's an interesting instrument. You know, most recorders just look alike anyway, so there's not a lot. But the tone hole in the back is noteworthy. This is the thumb hole that you use, that you put your left thumb on when you're playing notes, and if you pull it down, you can get octaves. I've showed that to you a number of times. But it's circled with a piece of plastic. It's even with the plastic of the instrument. It's not raised or anything like that. But this is, I think, a good idea for students who are not familiar with the instrument to know that this is exactly where your thumb goes, your left thumb. Now, when I got this instrument, it came in this case. As I said, this one is from Japan, and it is called a Sanis B Jr. Now, this case I'll never use for this instrument again. It is so tight, I had to grab and pull and grab and pull, and I ended up by shaking it. It was so tight I couldn't get the instrument out of it. But it is the case that the instrument came in, and it was made for this instrument, but really, really tight. I'll keep the case and I'll use it, but I'll use it for smaller instruments that I won't have trouble getting out. Terribly, terribly tight. I took my fingers in and I pulled and I pulled and I pulled. I just couldn't get it out. It's almost like it was glued. The other thing that I found out about this instrument is when I got it, the front part, the head joint, was twisted toward the back so that the mouthpiece was in the opposite position that it should have been in. So this is the front part, and this is where your tone holes are. But this instrument had been turned around so that the front part, the labium, the mouthpiece, was in the back. I had a terrible time in moving it to where it was supposed to be. I don't know what happened, but you move it, it looks like it's going to move. It should move. It's a three-piece instrument, but when I tried it, it just would not move. I actually had to get grippers, you know, those round grippers you get to open bottles with. I had to use two of them, one for each hand, and just take and just grip it and do that over and over again before I could get it in the right position. So it's in the right position. I'll never move it again. But you should be able to move it easily. Any part of an instrument should be able to be moved easily, but it should be tight enough that it holds its position. You know, clarinets, saxophones, flutes, you can take them apart to clean them. You can put like cork grease on the cork and things like that. But you don't have to fight it to get it off. But at the other hand, it's tight enough so it's not going to move on you when you're playing it. But this was almost immovable. But it is a very nice instrument, and it plays quite well. So it's made out of plastic. And when you're playing an instrument that you're not familiar with, it's either made in a foreign country or a different kind of instrument you're not familiar maybe with the brand name, you have to adjust because there might be a little bit of difference in the way that the instrument handles. Each instrument is kind of an individual. It handles in its own way, or the position of the holes may be a little different. Well, let's try this one. Now, when you get to the A, it's a little difficult, so it's not as good on the higher notes, but you can get more than an octave on it. Now, my Yamahas would pick that up easily. This one doesn't, so it's not quite as good as my Yamahas. I'm looking at it. There's no sign on it that it's a Baroque instrument, which means it could have just a regular German fingering. That means when you play your F, and you just use this one finger for the F. If you had a Baroque instrument, it would say there would be a little B either above or right below the tone hole in the back. You would skip this, if it was a Baroque, it's not. But if it was Baroque, you'd skip this hole and go for the next hole. Now, actually, there's so little difference, it doesn't make any difference how you finger it. But this is a Japanese instrument, and it's very, very tight. I will not be able to move it again. It's like a battle to move it, but it plays quite well. I could do solos on this instrument without any trouble. Now, if you get an instrument, and I'll just interject this before I have a chance to forget it, if you get an instrument that's new to you, but it's not new, it's either from somebody else who had it, but they're getting rid of it. I mean, my friend bought me 2 instruments, and I'm showing you both this morning, and they were at some kind of a Salvation Army store or something like that, and she says, look at these 2 recorders. They're orphans. They need a home. So she bought them and gave them to me because she knows they would have a good home. So we kind of laughed about it, but an instrument, you don't know who's used it. You don't know if they have medical conditions, so it really needs to be bathed in some alcohol, just for the sake of sanitation. So when I got it home, I took it out with a lot of effort from the case, and then you just take rubbing alcohol and you just rub over the mouthpiece, especially the head joint and the mouthpiece, and then the rest of the instrument. If that didn't put any alcohol in it, I just rubbed over it, and that's will sanitize it. And that's the way that you sanitize instruments that are plastic. Now, if it had cork in it, you couldn't use alcohol on the cork. If it was made out of wood, it either had a wooden mouthpiece on it or a reed, which is made out of wood. A lot of them are. You would never put alcohol on wood. So a wooden instrument, even though it's brown and it looks like wood, a wooden instrument, never, 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 never touch it with alcohol or you will split the wood. I don't care what kind of wood it is. And if you have an inexpensive instrument that comes from the Caribbean, this of course does not, then most of those are made out of bamboo, and it doesn't take anything to split the wood so you can't play it. So don't use alcohol on wood, don't use alcohol on wood reeds, but on the plastics or metal, you can use wood. I mean, you can use alcohol without damaging it. This is a very nice instrument, and I like it. How am I getting the octaves? I'm pulling the thumb down about halfway, not a lot, maybe not quite halfway. You don't want it down too far, but I'm pulling it down so that that tone hole in the back, which is called the thumb hole, is not fully covered, and it just bounces up an octave, and that's how you get your octaves on a recorder. It doesn't work for every note, but it works for a lot of notes. If you're going from a low D to a high D, then you don't do it like that. There's a difference in the fingering. Low D has your D, and the high D, you take all the fingers off except this one, except the middle finger. That note is closed. It's the second hole down, and you leave it up. And you balance it because it's in your mouth, and you have a finger down here that helps to balance it. But you don't have any other fingers down other than that. So you see that for an octave there, you have a different fingering. But if you're going to do an E, which is the note above a D, you just put that down a little, and you get the higher octave. Now, if I wanted to force it, I could probably get that high D doing the same thing by just lowering that thumb over the thumb hole, but it's not the proper way to play it. and you can see it's out of pitch. It actually pushes it. If you try to do it the same way by you lowering your thumb on the thumb hole and doing half holing, it's called half holing, then your pitch for that D is not going to be right. When you go from the low D to the high D, the pitch will not be right. That's right. It actually pitches like you have an E flat or a D sharp. So you need to use the right fingerings. I use alternate fingerings a lot. Some instruments can do them well and some instruments can't. But this is a very good instrument nonetheless. I wouldn't mind playing a solo on it. It's actually that good. So that's the Japanese instrument. This is the Korean instrument. It is called the Angel Star. And it's a junior model, it's for students, and the mouthpiece is a little bit different than the one in Japan. If you take, well, I don't even know if you can tell or not on TV, but this is flatter. When it goes up, it flattens out. It goes up. This is a little bit more curved. It doesn't make any difference, really. They play well. It's just a matter of design. If you look at these two, okay, I've got the Japanese one on, well, it'll be your left, but it's my right. The design is a little different. It has a little different way of showing where the joints end or begin. This would be more like an LMI. It would be more like an American instrument. There's no band around the foot joint, but there is here, and there's just a little band around the head joint. So you can see they're very, very close. Okay, so let me play this one that is from Korea. It's easy to get them mixed up. I've only had them for 2 or 3 days, and my friend just gave them to him this last week. It moves easily, you don't have any trouble moving the joints. It plays well. Actually, I think it plays better than what the Japanese one does. The higher notes are a little better, easier to get, and it's a very nice instrument. Look at the bottom of it. This is all white cream colored, and of course the hole, the bore hole, goes right through here. And this is also the same. It's a little bit, this one isn't exactly flat. This one is flat. So if you can see the difference, I don't know if you can see much of a difference on television. Can you? Okay. So this is a more puffy, not quite flat one, and this is the absolute flat one. Now I was interested in that because the LMIs, which I brought one in to show you, let me put these down. This is an LMI. And the LMI is made in Korea as well, I guess. I didn't realize that, but I can see my notations here. It's made in Korea. It plays quite well. The LMI plays a little bit different than the other two, a little bit better, but I've noticed with the LMIs, and it's not really a complaint at all, but you really have to push some air in it because it can easily be a minuscule, little tiny bit flat if you don't. Now, mine do. Now, that's not a complaint because usually you're going to be playing enough and using enough air so that it brings it right up to pitch. But if you're a very soft player, you don't put much air into it, it will flatten it a little. Any instrument will be flatter if you don't put much air into it. But this is just a tiny bit more noticeable. Now, if I even get it a little bit flat, I don't think anyone would notice. It is such a tiny bit of flatness, but I notice it. And if you were playing professionally, you would notice it. But look at the bottom of this. This LMI has no cream-colored covering over the bottom of it. No cream color to show the foot joint where it begins. But you can pull that head joint off. It's a student model instrument. I've used them. I've had a guest on the show that has one, and they're actually quite a good instrument. Now, I just want to mention something to you, and it's just something that's on my mind. I've noticed in the last few years, and I bring this up just for your attention. It may have nothing to do with your life, but it's something that I am aware of. I've noticed the last few years there are a lot of music companies and music stores that have closed. Now, I don't know why. I mean, I work with music stores. I bought a lot of instruments. I bought instruments for students and picked out instruments for students and gone in and say, okay, I want the best student model flute you can get, or best student model clarinet you can get for a student that I'm going to be teaching. So the parents want me to pick out the instrument because they know I'm going to know which is the best one. But a lot of these music stores have closed. I think it's a shame because the problem is if they're closed, where do you go for repair? The saxophones, the clarinets, the oboes, bassoons, flutes, they're all complicated in their design. I say they're complicated, and they are. They've got rods and pads and cork and springs and all things like that. They have reeds, you know, and bamboo reeds, different kinds of reeds, cane reeds. So they're complicated, and things do go wrong. And, you know, to pull them apart, to fix them, you've got to know where every screw goes, and every screw can be very, very tiny. You've got to know what every spring is connected to, and they are complicated to repair. Now, people do a good job in repairing them. But the thing is, if the music store is closed, what do you do? And you can't find a person who's just off the street saying, will you fix my instrument for me? So this is what you would have to do. First of all, if you call a high school or a school system that has a music teacher, if the school has a music program, they would know where an instrument could go for repair, or if you wanted to buy an instrument, where to go for the best instruments, they probably would know. Another idea is if you are close to a university, the university or college probably has a music program. I can't imagine why they wouldn't. And they would know the best places to go to buy and repair instruments. You might have to end up by sending an instrument to be repaired. You might have to send it away for that. I've had two saxophones that have been rebuilt in the last few years, and the people did a wonderful job. But those music stores are closed. So where would I take my saxophones? If something goes wrong, it needs a new pad, it needs a new spring, it needs some new screws. It's not just doing it right. Where do you take them? Well, if you can, call a university or college music department. So where do you teach it? Where do you teach students? You know, I have a niece who loves clarinet. She's a beginner. She's just a child. She's doing well with it. She had to stop because her teacher backed out. The teacher backed out because the school decided to drop the music program, so she no longer has a music teacher. She wants to continue. I'm 3 hours away. If I were closer, I'd teach it myself. Clarinet's one of my main instruments that I play. So I told her what I'm telling, I told her mother, what I'm telling you. Call the university as close as you can get by and talk to the university music department. They will have students that are studying certain instruments, and a lot of the students in music programs and universities and colleges, they're very advanced. They're very good musicians. They've studied for years. And so a lot of these students will teach on a private basis. They'll take on a few students and teach them privately. That might be one way to get a music teacher. And or a high school, they may have a person who's a teacher of woodwinds or teaches woodwinds in the school that might be willing to take on a private student. So it is a problem that we have so many music shutdowns, and I'm a little concerned as what's going to happen. Now, one of the reasons that I like to focus on these instruments like the flutophones, the recorders, and so forth, is that the repair is almost minimal. If you have an instrument that's easy to play and it's good in pitch, then you can play it for years and years. Now, there are some instruments, the wooden instruments of the recorders, that sometimes need to be revoiced. You can actually revoice an instrument if it's old, if it's used a lot, and it's lost some of the beauty of its tone. It can be revoiced. You would not revoice a plastic one, but you can wooden ones. You know, wooden instruments are usually more expensive than plastic ones, but the plastic ones are also very beautiful. I have both, and they're all very beautiful. But it's easier to play an instrument, and you'd be surprised the kinds of things you can play on a simple instrument. It's just marvelous. I do Handel's Messiah every year on a recorder like this. This is one of the recorders that I use, and it's a Yamaha. And the beauty of Yamaha, it's never let me down. And these simple instruments don't have the pads and the cork and the various things, the springs. They will occasionally have a key. They will have, if they have a key, they'll have a pad on the key. That's kind of mandatory. But usually there's not a lot that you have to deal with, and you can play an awful lot of music on them. So I think keep your eyes out. If you have a child that wants to play, just go to every source that you can find to find the best teacher, to find the best instruments, and don't be satisfied getting an inexpensive instrument for a child. An inexpensive instrument may be good or it may not be good, but the problem is if it's not good, your child will get discouraged and they won't want to take lessons anymore. You want to get them something that's easy to play, that's good, high quality, in pitch, very important. And you need to seek out a person who knows how to check instruments to make sure that they are the best for your child. So I see that I'm kind of running out of time. I didn't mean to talk this long, but I think it's an issue that you need to consider. If you are a musician, how do you get your instruments repaired? Where do you take them? If you're a student, who do you get for a teacher that you can rely on that'll stick with you as you're learning and as you're growing? So these are just issues that modern society is dealing with. I know a lot of people buy things online. I have never bought an instrument online. The problem is I want to play it first. I want to see how good it is. I want to see how much it's in pitch. I want to handle it and see if it's a good fit for me. You can't do that online. You actually have to take the instrument and kind of feel it out. So the instrument has to be in your presence for that. And if it's a used instrument, you never know what's wrong with it when you get it. You'll find out when you start playing if it has a problem. But you don't want to be saddled with somebody else's problem either. So I'm going to close it here, and next time we'll go over, I do have 3 more instruments to show you that are new that I just bought, and I'm going to go into the fingering charts, as I said before. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time.